key document that is relating to what our whole discussion is about is the one on the relationship of the church to non-Christian religions. One of the shortest, but one of the most impactful.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that the Second Vatican Council is famous for the Nostra Aetate, and actually was a declaration in those three levels, higher in the hierarchy of the importance of those documents. The constitutions are the most important, then decrees, and then the declaration. And this was in the declaration, and it didn't even necessarily specifically what originally it meant to be for the Jews. Then it expanded itself to treat other religions.
In fact, the document that affects us the most is not just the document on ecumenism, which was a separate document. It was one of the decrees, but the declaration about non-Christian religions, the Latin name for it is Nostra Aetate. Now, documents in the church, their titles always come from the first two Latin words of the document itself. So Nostra Aetate means in our time, in this time. So that's how all documents in the church are recognized by the first two words of the title. But this, I just want to read to you the first paragraph of this document, because this was earth-shattering. In fact, this document was one of the last ones promulgated. It was in October of 1965. The council ended in December of 1965. So this is just the first paragraph of this declaration. In our time, there's your title. When day by day humankind is being drawn closer together, so there's the understanding that people are, because of news media, because of technology, the world is growing closer together. And the ties between different peoples are becoming stronger. The church examines more closely her relationship to non-Christian religions. In her task of promoting unity and love among human beings, indeed among nations, she considers above all in this declaration what people have in common and what draws them to fellowship. Now, in today's world, we don't see that as earth-shattering. But 60 years ago,
yes,
very, very, very much so. What the document ultimately does, the document, before it took on its final form, was meant to be solely a document concerning the church and the Jews. And then all of a sudden, the perspective opened. One of the reasons, interestingly enough, why it broadened, it was trying to understand, the church was trying to understand the Jews, but the context was, first of all, the context of the years 1939, especially to 1945. The things that the Jews were being persecuted in those years, and then, above all, the Holocaust itself. But also in the 60s, to show you how things begin to change, you had the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So if you're going to talk about non-Christian religions, besides talking about Judaism, there was another world religion that was on the scene now, Islam. How do we begin to talk about and understand Islam? And once you begin, if you include then Islam in this discussion, you've got the two other major world religions, which are Hinduism and Buddhism. So this short document all of a sudden opened the church's doors and windows to having to be open to not only the Jews and all of the anti-Semitism. And that was the reason why the document was geared towards talking about the Jews, because all of a sudden it became quite clear of the anti-Semitism that was in existence. But not only at that time, but if you look back over the history of the church, the anti-Semitism which grew up as the church was growing. So what, all of a sudden, we Catholics, all right, or at least those of us who were aware of it, had our eyes opened and say, man, we better start understanding and bringing ourselves to the modern world. And when Gotti had said to me, mentioned that my experience in Rome of universality was one of the most important experiences I had, because that was the thing that opened me up from the Catholic ghetto that I grew up in, all right, or the Catholic culture that I grew up in, to understanding what it meant that the church was universal. The word Catholic itself means universal, small c. All right? And all of a sudden my eyes were open, that if I was going to deal and do theology, I had to do it in the context of universality and in the context of understanding God after the Holocaust. Because we, at least in theology circles, the impact of the Holocaust on a theological world, all right, not only shook up the Jews, but it refashioned the question, what kind of God, the God we deal with in theology, what kind of God would allow the Holocaust to happen?
And I would add, what kind of man would allow a Holocaust to happen? And I think it treated both. It tried to deal with both. The relationship that we had with God, and how did we permit something like this to happen, but also how did we permit each other to act like this.